White House laser focused on affordability as Trump softens tariff strategy. Okay, so there's two stories. Like, well, affordability is just a Democrat hoax. It's not a real thing. No one's really dealing with that. It's just a bunch of BS. But behind closed doors, apparently, guys, we got to get this affordability thing scored away as we're going through this next phase. So the Trump administration is ramping down tariffs for even more goods as the White House zeroes in on its messaging around affordability. The White House announces Wednesday that tariffs slated to kick in Thursday as furniture, kitchen cabinets, and vanities would be postponed for another year. This indicates that on some level, the White House understands that President Trump's tariffs are driving up consumer prices and that Trump and the Republican Party are incurring substantial political damage from higher prices. Michael Strain said the White House slapped a 25% tariff on furniture, kitchen cabinets, and vanities in October. Tariffs on furniture were slated to increase to 30% in January, and tariffs on the cabinets and vanities were set to increase to 50%. But they're trying to figure out something going on here with affordability. Tom, your thoughts on the story?
Well, first of all, we were correct. We talked about this, and we said that the tariffs, and we said at the beginning of the year, they would be tactics, not taxes. And guess what? All the economists come out and so surprised. Oh, wow, well, it really hasn't gone up. It hasn't been as inflationary as we thought. Even the Fed, Jerome Powell, the short timer who's about to lose his job, has said that. And what's happening this week is the president is talking more about affordability to kind of take the messaging back from the Democrats who keep saying, oh, it's inflationary. If you look at one of the things that was happening this week, it was a bunch of pre-made construction stuff. These are things that, average Americans buy every week, not vanities, kitchen cabinets, higher end furniture. Come on. Those aren't the things that people are buying every week, and that's not what tariffs are going to cause inflationary. As a matter of fact, he moved on some agricultural tariffs that were in Italy, and it took the tariffs down to 1.2% on certain Italian pastas. So the pastas that are coming in, it was less than 1/7 of our sales tax. So what's happening right now, point one, the president hears these messages Democrats are trying to push on affordability. So now he's fighting back saying, hey, it wasn't inflationary in the first place. And I'll tell you what, let me suspend this tariff over here, this tariff here that was on kitchen vanities, cabinets, and things that you would use for remodels. And Americans aren't really doing that right now, right? There's not a lot of remodeling going on. You see the quarterly reports from Home Depot and Lowe's, but energy is down, heating oil is down for the winter, and also he just did like what he did on the imported Italian pasta, make it like a 1% tariff coming over there. So he's getting the joke that he can't just say to the microphone, oh, affordability is a headline issue that's being spun by the Democrats. No, there's some reality to it because the prices haven't come back down from Biden inflation. And so now the White House and the president are out there speaking to it to counter the message of the Democrats. And yes, certain things like Italian pastas came down a little bit.
Jeff, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is not a messaging thing. The fact that they try to treat it as a messaging problem shows that they're still kind of out to lunch.
You're saying it's a real thing.
It is absolutely a real thing. The original problem here that Republicans had specifically is they came in, last year or the year before, sorry, it's 2025 or 2026 now. They came in the year before and said, we're going to bring prices down. Mm-hmm. Well, in economics, prices don't go down. That was a mistake to begin with. When prices went up back in 21 and 22, that was a permanent change. You can't go backwards. Every supply shock in history, prices go up in a step fashion, and then they level off where they are at a new step fashion or the new equilibrium, and they stay there. So what Republicans should have said is, you want to blame Biden for that? Fine. Biden made you poorer. Now we're going to try to fix it. Not by getting prices to go down, because they will not go down. They should have been clear on that. Prices will never go down again. We are never going to see 2019 prices again. So what we're going to try to do is our absolute best to make sure the jobs market is as strong and as resilient as matching the rhetoric coming from all these different economists in the Federal Reserve. So that what happens is, what should have happened if we had a strong economy, that you have prices that went up in 21 and 22, or 21 back then, 5 years ago, and then incomes rise to, first of all, meet prices and then exceed them.
What happens first? Income goes, cost of goods goes up first, then income rises? What is the typical
it has
pattern?
in this case, because prices were forced higher by government action, it was a non-economic.
Income has to be forced to increase.
Income should naturally go up. If there was a actual recovery from the pandemic and the lockdowns, then incomes would naturally rise over enough time that it would equalize with the prices from 21 and 22, and then exceed them. So that even though the cost of a car is now $50,000 instead of $30,000,
right,
you have more than enough income to pay for it, and so we all get used to the new higher prices, and it doesn't become a major problem.
But is that happening?
No, that's the problem. What really happened was prices went up massively in 21 and 22, and incomes never caught up. This is what people are talking about when they talk about inflation and affordability. It's not about the price of a dryer or something that's gone up in the last year. It's the price of everything that went up 5 years ago, and incomes never went up enough for people to claw back.
So on whose fault is that too? How do you address it?
First, whose fault is that?
Yeah.
It's the government's fault. They created the pandemic and the lockdowns, and then because of the pandemic,
Under Biden, when they did the pandemic and the lockdown,
can't forget it was also Trump.
It was the spending was on both sides.
Spending was on both sides. The lockdowns
was on both sides.
Yeah, it was both sides. I mean, you got to blame both sides for this part.
On lockdown?
Sure.
And spending and the printing.
Who locked down on Trump's side?
2020? 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That was in Trump's watch.
Right, the lockdown. But it wasn't you're not talking about the lockdown that happened under Biden?
No, the repeated emergency pandemic measures, that was absolutely devastating. That's where really the price changes came from.
Right.
Because what happened is you had the economy starting to come back from the lockdowns, so there's more demand that was rising, but at the same time, the supply side of the economy was hindered by all those emergency measures and
government
logistics.
printed more money.
Not money printing. What happened was it's called a supply shock, which is an imbalance between demand and supply. So you have demand and supply that completely plummeted during the lockdowns. When they came back, demand started to come back, but supply couldn't. It was restrained. People were home. They couldn't work. We couldn't get stuff shipped from overseas. So demand came back faster than supply, and this is basic economics. What happens when demand is growing faster than supply is? The only way to reconcile those is prices have to rise. Think about it as an auction process. If you have an auction where a ton of people show up and there's only a couple sellers, the sellers are going to get huge prices for it. So because supply was restricted, that's why it's called supply shock, prices had to rise to meet for the rising demand. Now, what should have happened, what the government said was going to happen, was that we are going to do all these stimulus plans. We're going to give money to people. And what that's going to do is that's going to temporarily stimulate the economy so that the process I talked about, where incomes would start to rise and then slowly over time, they would offset and exceed price changes. But that never happened because stimulus never really actually stimulates.
How do you address it now?
How do you address it now is we got to get the labor market back working again, which means the economy needs to hit some kind of equilibrium coming off of that, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, where it was artificially stimulated in all the worst ways. Now it has to clear out all the bad stuff, including the stuff we're going to talk about here with fraud. I mean, fraud and government waste was a huge part of stimulating the economy, which is the worst way to try to create a sustainable economic growth pattern. You don't create growth from waste and fraud and inefficiency and unproductivity. So we got to clean all that stuff out and let the economy start growing again. It's like the same reason why you cut back all your weeds in your garden. All the bad growth, you got to get rid of that. That's what
Tom, what do you
recession's
think about what
for.
he's saying?
So there's a couple things here. First of all, I agree that there was this cataclysmic jump in prices that happened under Biden. And you can argue whether it started at Trump, but you can certainly look at the charts and it went nuts under Biden. And there's a lot of core products that probably aren't going to be able to come down. Energy is one where the president can help it get down. I mean, look what Biden did. Biden depleted the SPR, Strategic Petroleum Reserve, to artificially drop gasoline prices in the
Which
face.
never happened.
Huh?
They used the SPR and it didn't actually get oil prices to go down.
Correct, but that's what he said he was doing.
Yeah.
Instead, it just depleted it. And so
But again, that's all just, it's the messaging. We need to do something to appear to be doing something.
correct.
That's
Well, he
really the
didn't
problem.
do anything. What Trump is doing something, and you can look at the price of gas outside of the blue states where have the artificial cap taxes. Like California's got a $1.90 cap tax on the true price of gas. So you take a look at what you'd pay, say, in Texas, Alabama, even New Jersey, and then put $1.90 on it, the California cap tax. And that's why it's $5 in California and $2.99 in other states. So the president can push down on energy, but this president needs to talk about affordability to blunt what's happening with the Democrats. That's the messaging thing. What you're saying, solution, I agree the solution isn't messaging, but in 1 year, you're not going to have a 30% increase in American income. That is, by the way, we do see that around the world. It's hyperinflation, right? If everybody's income goes up, then all the companies
that's why
pay those people.
It happens over time. What I'm arguing for is that from the president and political perspective is that what they should do is be honest. They should just be honest and say, look, we're not going to get prices to go back. That's not how economics works. So that's we're not even going to try. That's not our goal here. Our goal here is to
demand, though.
Do you think any president would say, the other guy did it and I can't fix it? I'm not even going to try.
No, that's what I'm saying is
he's not saying that. What he's saying is
we need to go in another direction.
What Snider is saying is we're officially in a new reality.
The new reality
is
$50,000 a year cars instead of $30,000.
So then, but what do you do with that? How do you address?
You're
that
not going to get the cars to go. Prices
I understand
to go down.
that. That's what I'm saying to you. So when you're saying, so is the solution to
the messaging? If you want to go to the messaging needs to be.
No, and I'm not talking messaging. I could care less about messaging. What I care about is results. I want to find out, what do you do? So
strongest job market that we can possibly have.
How do you do that?
That's the only way to get out of this, is to make sure that incomes grow in a fashion that pays for all of those price changes from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
How do we get jobs growing again? We need a lot of things to take place, but among them is we need the banking sector to be more efficient and actually start making loans again instead of just lending to BlackRock and the most liquid borrowers out there. We need a more efficient banking sector. We need a more efficient monetary system. We also need, like I said, we got to get the government out of the economy. The government is the biggest impediment because the government is all fraud, waste, and inefficiency.
I agree with that, but you've just, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, but you can't, fix every layer of the lasagna all at once.
I'm not arguing that we should. What I'm saying is the government should come clean and say, look, we're not going to focus on prices because that's a lost cause. They should be honest about that. That's a lost. Prices are never going to go backward.
Prices of what? Prices
everything, just general prices.
General
houses,
prices,
houses.
Gas. You saw the article that came out saying, with gas prices being where it's at right now, it's saving Americans $500 million. I don't know if you saw that number or not.
Yeah, I mean, the wholesale price of gasoline at the CME is $1.70 a gallon. That's where it is right now, which is the lowest it's been in 5 years. That's actually not a good thing.
What about deflationary innovation though? Like the way that a flat screen TV started off at $10,000 and now say it's $200. So there's examples of things going down in price.
Yeah, there's always individual items that go down in price, and tradable commodities can go up and down in price. Sure, but we're talking about goods that usually the economists use the term sticky. This is what sticky really applies to, which means that when prices go up, they tend to stay there.
But the things that are killer, though, is like electricity, food, housing. Like I think those are the core things that people really get upset about if those are unaffordable. And I think the problem too is I think deficit spending in general is a bigger example of what happened during COVID. Like that M2 money supply chart I sent you, Rob. So this is the amount of money in the economy, and obviously it went up a ton in 2020, but just the fact that we're spending an extra $1 trillion per year than what we actually have, that's the creation of new money. I know it's not money printing; it's the Treasury issuing new debt, but that's adding new money into the economy. That's artificially increasing demand. So, of course, things are going to be more expensive if we're putting more money in the economy every year, and that's such a waste of capital too. By the way, the Fed created an extra $9 trillion of money on its balance sheet. So that went to banks. So why aren't banks using those loans efficiently? Are they just sitting on that money?
Yeah, what they've been doing is buying U.S. Treasuries.
Right.
Because they're risk averse.
Yeah.
So we need risk taking in the economy, which can't happen because of all this other stuff.
I think the one part that you talked about, which I agree with, Rob, can you pull up the number of banks in the history of America over the years, how many we had and how many we are now?
Small
because
banks.
That's exactly that. Small banks, just banks, total banks in America. If you go to while you're doing that, I'll look up the reports. But the question becomes, if prices, like you said, flat screen TVs went from $10,000. You can buy a TV right now for $400 or $500. I can't believe how cheap it is right now to buy so what does it say? It says 4,000 commercial banks in the U.S., 2023. Okay, so let's just say around 3917, according to FDIC. The number of banks peaked in the 20th century with estimates typically around 29,400, 30,400. That's before the Great Depression. But even at 1980s, we had 14,000 banks. To go from 14,000 banks to 39.17, no longer lending money to small business owners to start because the underwriting becomes tighter. They want the bigger deals. They want the bigger business. I can see this happening. But, the other part is as well where the incentive comes about, let's develop cheaper cars, okay? More cost-effective cars. Let's develop housing that's going to be more cost-effective. How do you do that? Innovation, this is a time where innovation can really lead. But go to that chart right there, Rob. Go to that chart right there. Look at that. I mean, that tells the whole story right there.
Consolidation.
Look at that. That's not good.
Yeah, it wasn't a contraction. It was a roll-up.
Yeah, it was a roll-up. That's exactly what it was.
It's all mergers.
It's all mergers. And the consumer wins there. Look how sudden it is from 1980. So why, by the way, Jeff,
the Eurodollar system.
why is that sudden from 1980, though? If you look at the number, it's increasing 50, 60, 70, 80s, and then it drops.
Yeah, the reason why is because of international consolidation. You have international competition. So we internationalized the monetary system starting in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and by the 1980s it became hyper-international, which meant that you don't have a small regional bank in a local U.S. location competing with other small regional banks in that same location. Now you have large-scale banks in Switzerland and Japan and Asia competing with the large banks on Wall Street. And those are the only banks that they suck up all the money and oxygen. So they're
Got it.
And it is a big bank. What do? You buy all the smaller ones. It's the cheapest way to continue to grow and scale.
The average person watching this, what can they do?
What can they do?
What can the average person do?
As far as you're talking about prices, the economy?
To fight against this,
Be
fight against affordability.
Last time I was here, you talked about is invest in yourself. Make sure that you are individually doing everything you can to maximize your own talent. So whatever prices are due and whatever
You're not affected by it.
You are affected by it, but you're better able to handle it. If you're investing in yourself and raising your own income potential, then you can handle higher prices.
I agree.
I mean, this is terrible. This is horrible stuff. But I mean, it's the reality. The reality is we can't change it. We can't go backwards. So let's be honest about it and deal with it moving forward.
Well, to your point about wages, you've got a couple of things that are going to happen this year, and that you're going to hear headlines that are more and more talking about like job retraining and displacement. And you're going to hear going to the election, no, the labor market's actually better than people think, but we have some people in the wrong places and robots are taking over the warehouse jobs. So those people need different training and need to be other places. You're going to hear about displacement, geographic labor shortage, and job retraining, which is all messages that's true, but they're going to be trying to say, hey, better paying jobs are available here, here, and here. Because remember, it's election year.
Having said that, folks, since September 9th or 10th, even when we went to Aspen, I keep telling you this, I have been wearing the same exact shoes. I'm not kidding with you. This sounds crazy, doesn't it? It has to be. It's the only thing that I wear every single day, and I show you every single time. This is on, right? Future Looks Bright shoes. We are now seeing this in 20, I think we just hit 25 or 26 countries that it's been ordered in. If you're somewhere in the world watching this, you haven't placed an order yet, go ahead. But here's a Future Looks Bright shoes. Rob, go ahead and play the clip. When we set out to create a shoe that blends comfort, function, and luxury, we had the choice to make it fast. We had the choice to make it cheap. We chose neither. Instead, we chose Tuscany, Italy. We chose true Italian craftsmanship, each pair touched by 50 skilled hands. We chose patience, spending 2 years perfecting every detail, and we chose the finest quality at every step. Introducing the Future Looks Bright collection. Not rushed, not disposable, not ordinary. Rather, intentional, luxurious, timeless. All right, so guys, it's officially on the fourth order. This is how quickly this thing's going right now. We were not expecting for a shoe, but it has become such a big hit. And the biggest thing is people come to this page and they compare to the Berluti, the Ferragamo, the Zegna, the Gucci, and you look at the FLB and what it offers with the Superfoam technology at the bottom of it and the craftsmanship, made in Tuscany, Italy, at 5 factories. If you haven't placed an order for yourself or your husband or your son or somebody, go place an order. They will fall in love with the shoes. Go read the reviews on the website for yourself, only from people who purchased the shoes, and enjoy it. They'll come back to you saying, this is the most comfortable thing I've ever worn. Go to vtmerch.com, place your order. And having said that, let's get right into it. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.